Hi guys, Malloree here, and today we're going to do a shark dissection, which is super fun, super cool. It's a good way to learn all about kind of how fish are made and what they look like on the inside as well as the outside. But before we get to the actual cutting of the shark, I figured we could go over kind of what the different parts of a shark on the outside look like and their functions and what they are called before we get into our shark. Now the type of shark we're dissecting today is called a Spiny Dogfish shark. The Latin name Squalus acanthius. And sharks, as we know, are different types of fishes, and they are in the chondrichthyes group of fish, which means they have those cartilaginous skeletons. So here's our very blank shark. My drawing skills are not that great when it comes to sharks, so we're just going to go with it. Now everyone knows the top fin of a shark. It makes it really easy to identify that it is a shark. And this is called a dorsal fin. Some sharks even have two dorsal fins, which is the shark that we'll dissect today does have two dorsal fins. And then we have the tail fin. Tail fins in fishes are called caudal fins. And the shape of the fin, of the tail fin or the caudal fin of the shark actually tells you a lot about where the shark lives in the water column and how it moves. These sharks are bottom dwellers, so they have this hetero tail fin where it's two different shapes. Then we have our pectoral fin, the one that comes out on the side. As well as a pelvic fin down here on the bottom. Now, sharks, it's really easy to tell if you have a male or a female shark because it's visible on the outside. If it is a female, they'll just have these pelvic fins, and sometimes fish have anal fins, which are another set of fin on the bottom. And if it is a male shark, then they will have claspers. So when we get to looking at our shark, we can figure out if it is a male or a female. So those are all of the fins on our shark. Now, sharks again, easy recognized by their gills on the outside, or the gill slits on the outside of the shark. And the shark we have today actually has 5 gill slits. Different sharks have different numbers of gill slits. Let's see, what else does our shark need? We have, so sharks, like I said, are fish. Fish have this really cool extra thing called a lateral line. We'll get into what that is used for in a minute. And also, if you've ever noticed with fish, particularly sharks, they are darker colored on the top and lighter colored on the bottom. And that is called counter shading. A lot of different animals are colored that way. Let's see, what else does our shark need? Oh, our shark needs a face. So of course, sharks have eyes. And then let's give him a mouth. Ah, it's not a very scary looking mouth. Ugh. All right, lots of teeth. And then their nares, which is another word for nostril. And a cool thing that sharks have too, kind of on their chin, are these things called the ampullae of Lorenzini. Mr. Lorenzini discovered those, so he got to name it after himself. And what are we missing? Oh, of course, sharks are fish, and fish are covered in scales. So shark scales don't look like your bony or ray finned fish scales. They're actually called dermal denticles, and they kind of have the shape of a tooth. So they're angled back a little bit kind of fit inside of the shark like that. And of course the shark is covered in all of those completely. So that's all of our parts of the shark. And now I think Rachel can come and share with us what all of these parts do and mean.
Hey everyone, it's Rachel here, and we are just going to go over this lovely drawing of a spiny dogfish that Malloree drew. Now she has drawn it and she has labeled the parts of the shark, but we need to discuss about like what are the function of these different parts, because every part is really, really important for our shark. So we'll start with the fins. So the famous dorsal fin that everybody knows about, you know, when you think of the shark, you go like, dana, dana. So the dorsal fin actually keeps that shark upright and it prevents him from turning over so he's not upside down. So that helps stabilize our shark. The pelvic fin down here also helps keep our shark upright and prevent them from turning over so they can stay on the right side. Our pectoral fin right here, those fins are used for steering so that they can decide which way they'd like to go, and they have what's called fixed pectoral fins. So you usually think about fins on a fish, they can either move them up and down or side to side, but sharks have a fixed pectoral fin and they can't move them. They are stationary, kind of like an airplane. When it flies out, those wings don't move. So, and then the last fin is the caudal fin, which that shark uses for, it's the power source of the shark for it being able to swim really, really fast and move through the water. And they move that caudal fin side to side. Unlike a dolphin, they'll move their fluke up and down. And then depending on the shape of that fin, the caudal fin, depends on how fast that fish can swim. And sharks, they can swim very, very fast. The top part of their caudal fin is larger than the bottom, and that shape is called a heterocircle shape, and that allows them to swim very, very fast. It also helps keep them very, it prevents them from sinking in the water because sharks are very, very dense. So that bigger part of the fin helps keep that shark swimming upright and prevents it from sinking down to the bottom. Some other parts of the shark that Malloree has drawn for us is that she mentioned the claspers down here. Now only our male sharks will have claspers, the females won't have them, and that is what our male sharks use in order for reproduction. What else she put down here is the gills. So all fish have gills. Sharks, they have gill slits. Our bony or ray-finned fish, they have a bony plate covering their gills called an operculum that our sharks don't have. So instead they have these gill slits, and that allows them to breathe. Sharks and other fish, they get their oxygen from the water. Unlike us, we get our oxygen to be able to breathe. We use the lungs and we get it from the air. And we have right here, this really cool part of the shark is the lateral line. The lateral line is really neat. That is like another sense that the shark can use to be able to sense changing of water pressure. So they can feel if other sharks or other fish or predators are approaching them, they can feel that change in water pressure and they can figure out where to go. Think about a school of fish, like in Finding Nemo, while the fish are being able to swim together without ever bumping into each other, and they're using their lateral line because they can sense or feel the other fish swimming next to them, and they do that with their lateral line. We also have some what Malloree calls counter shading right here, where the shark is darker on the top and lighter on the bottom, and this is a form of camouflage. If you were a predator and that shark was swimming underneath you and that predator looked down, they just see the dark part of the shark and it would blend in with the dark bottom of the ocean. Whereas if the predator was swimming underneath the shark and they looked up, it would be really white or light colored, and that would blend in with the brightness or the lightness of the sky. So then that's kind of how they're able to camouflage away from predators, and also they can seek out their prey like that. And our lovely shark face right here, we have the eyes, which the shark uses to see. The nares, right there is a little nostril. It's their nose. It's what they use to smell. And sharks, you probably heard that sharks can smell blood very, very well. That is a little bit of a misconception. They can smell blood really, really well, but they can smell fish blood very well because they like to eat fish. Whereas if you think about us humans, our blood is a lot different than fish, so they can't really smell our blood as well. Our blood is a lot more watery than a fish. Fish has really oily blood, so they smell fish blood really, really well. Human blood, not so much. And then we have our shark mouth, which has lots and lots and lots of teeth. So sharks have many, many rows of teeth. And when they're out hunting for fish and other prey, they will lose their teeth as they bite into their prey and they eat. And so, but they don't have to worry about that because a new row of a new tooth will push right in through, and they'll just keep replenishing their teeth. And so that's a lot of times you can also find lots of shark teeth out on the beach because sharks have just lots and lots of teeth that they lose, but then they get more over time. And in fact, the shark tooth is the state fossil of Georgia. And then my favorite thing on the shark is right here, the Ampullae of Lorenzini. It kind of sounds like a Harry Potter spell. And it looks like the shark has like these little freckles or blackheads down on his chin right here, but they are actually jelly-filled sacs which allow the shark to be able to sense electric currents in the water, which I think is really, really cool. So what specifically they're able to sense is the electric pulse beat of a heart. So they can sense like heartbeats from fish and other prey. So that's how, if you've ever seen a video of maybe a hammerhead or another shark swimming down on the bottom of the water and then all of a sudden they pull up a flounder or a stingray, they were able to know that that animal was hiding underneath the sand. By using their ampullae of Lorenzini, they can sense that heart rate or that heartbeat, and they know where these animals are hiding. This also helps the shark when picking off their prey. They like to pick off the weaker fish or the sick fish. And so if you're a sick or a weak fish in a group of a bunch of healthy fish, your heart is probably going to be beating a little bit faster. You're probably going to have to work a little bit harder to catch up with the rest of the group. And the shark is going to be able to sense that using that ampullae of Lorenzini and pick off that sick or weak fish. And that's actually a pretty good thing because then that's making our fish populations a lot more healthier while them eliminating those sick fish out there. And then our last thing is the scales. So Malloree mentioned that these shark scales kind of look in the shape like this. They're really, really tiny. They're very hard to see on a shark. A lot of times you have to use a microscope. And they're called dermal denticles, which means skin teeth. And if you were able to touch a shark, it would kind of feel really smooth going one way and then kind of like sandpaper the other way. And these scales allow the shark to swim really, really, really fast. And then it also prevents things like barnacles and other stuff from growing onto the shark and other sort of bacteria growth or nastiness. That kind of, those dermal denticles prevent those types of things from growing on the shark, which is really, really cool. And it's also due to these dermal denticles, scientists have been replicating these in hospitals by making counters on hospitals and things to prevent bacteria growth from growing on them. So we're learning a whole bunch about sharks and how we can use them in our technology. So that is the outside of our shark, but I bet we're doing a shark dissection, so let's go ahead and look inside our shark and see what we can learn there.
All right, so here is our spiny dogfish shark that we will be dissecting today. So let's just do a quick review and look at the outside parts of our shark and identify the different parts we did when we were looking at the drawing. So we'll start with the fins. The top fin right here is its dorsal fin, and the spiny dogfish actually has two dorsal fins. So this one right here is the primary dorsal fin, and it has a secondary down here by its tail. Now the spiny dogfish shark does get the name spiny dogfish because they do have a spine up at the top of each dorsal fin. Now these spines have been removed, but the spiny dogfish sharks out in the wild will have those spines that they use to defer predators. If you take a look at our shark, this is a full-grown shark. It's not a baby, so it's rather small. So without those spines, it could be pretty easy for a larger predator to pick it off. Let's move on to looking at the caudal fin. So here's our shark's caudal fin right here. As you can see, that heterocircle shape, or the top part of the fin is larger than the bottom. That helps keep it buoyant, as we mentioned during the drawing. And then we move down to the bottom part, or underside of the shark. You can see up here are the pectoral fins, and then down here are the pelvic fins. And if we look really closely, we can see these things right here. So these are claspers. So we know that this shark is in fact a male with those claspers present. Now, looking over our shark, we do notice that it's darker on the top and then lighter on the bottom. So that's that example of counter shading we talked about. And then if we look really closely along the side, we can see our shark's lateral line that it can use to sense the changes of water pressure. And then we look down here, we have our shark's gills, and if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it has 5 gill slits, and that's what our shark uses to help itself breathe. It absorbs that oxygen from the water. Now, with sharks, because they have these gill slits, the water must constantly be moving or flowing over those gills for it to grab that oxygen. Some sharks, like our spiny dogfish shark here, have what's called spiracles, and they have 2 present right here on the top of their head, so that sharks can make some small rests or pauses in the ocean. Spiny dogfish can actually rest for some period of time on the bottom of the water. When they're resting, that water isn't flowing over their gills. So what the spiracles do will make sure that oxygen is directed straight to their brain so they can still function. Not all sharks have these present. Some sharks, like the great white, do not have spiracles, so that means that they constantly have to be moving in order to get oxygen. If we continue looking, we notice that our shark has 2 eyes for seeing. When we look under here, it's got the nares, or its nostrils, to smell. And then if we look inside, we can see it's got some teeth. I'm not going to stick my finger in there because we all know that sharks have very, very sharp teeth. And you can look really, really closely. I'm going to see if we can get up close. You notice that it might have some little black heads, or it looks like maybe little like freckles, and that is our ampullae of Lorenzini, those jelly-filled sacs that can help the shark sense those electric currents right there. So they're really, really tiny, but very, very cool. As I'm touching the shark, I can feel those dermal denticles. When I touch it going one way, it feels pretty nice and smooth, but when I touch it the other way, it's kind of rough. It has that sandpaper-like texture. And I think that's everything on the outside of our shark. And let's get ready to look inside and see what we can find inside. Okay, so we're going to begin cutting open our shark. Now, because our shark was once a live animal, we want to make sure that we're treating our shark with as much respect as possible. So that means that every cut or incision we make, it's only to further our knowledge and to educate ourselves more about sharks. We're not going to be doing any unnecessary cuts right here. So we're going to start by making an incision in the shark's cloaca. So this is the shark's cloaca right here. It is a one opening where the shark can go number 1, number 2, and if she is a female, that is where she will give birth. So we'll start right there. And I'll make it go all the way up. And then just so we can open our shark up a little bit so we can see, I'm going to make a cut down here, across the top part of the pelvic fins. And then also across pectoral fins up here. And then we'll open up our shark. We'll see what we have.
So the first organ that we see and we come to is the largest internal organ in the shark. It's going to be the liver. It's all of this right here, and actually all of this on this side as well. So we will remove it just so we can get to everything else that we can find and see in the shark. It can be a little difficult. So sharks, unlike spiny ray finned fishes, sharks have an oily liver. And as we all know, oil and water do not mix. So the oily liver helps the shark with its buoyancy in the water column.
And the shark has a very large liver, as you can see. It takes up about 1/3 of its body. And then it also helps with the shark's buoyancy, but also, like our livers, it also helps fight off toxins and things that can get us sick.
It's kind of the filter of the body. Just gonna disconnect it from everything else in there. Now we can see the inside of the shark, but here's the liver. You can see it's quite a large. Our liver inside of us as people is also quite large as well.
And then this part right here hanging off the liver, this is the shark's gallbladder. So we also have a gallbladder, and it stores bile that helps with digestion. And sometimes the shark's gallbladder will have kind of a green tint to it. This one not so much, but that's its gallbladder.
Whoops. There we go. Right. Next, we will look at the shark's stomach, which is all of this here. Doesn't look like it's a pretty full stomach, but we'll look on the inside. And then we have, of course, the intestines, and you can see, here goes they don't have as much or long of intestines as we do in people. Shark's body isn't as big as ours, but you can see the intestinal tract. It goes out to this cloaca, as Rachel mentioned before, and that's the hole where everything comes out in the shark. Oops. Usually you can just pull the stomach out, but maybe I'll just cut it off at the top. It's a little difficult. Yeah, this looks to be an empty stomach, but that's okay because an empty stomach, you can still see all of the different folds in the shark's stomach. Oops, there we go. So those folds in the shark's stomach, it's difficult to say, are called rugae.
Nope, we got a little something in there.
Got a little something in there.
So it looks like our shark had a little bitty shrimp.
They're so small.
They're so little, but it looks like it was eating this right before it had met its demise. But yeah, so this is really interesting. We can see what it is that our shark is eating.
Which is cool. This is one of the reasons we dissect sharks, is to learn a bit more about them, and you can see that this shark eats shrimp. Now these are all those folds that we were talking about, the rugae. So when their stomach is full, these will expand and the stomach will be much larger, and then as the shark digests the food and it travels towards the intestines, which seem to be like they could have some food in them, but it's probably just,
It's usually mush by then.
it's usually mush by the time it gets to the digestion tract.
Yeah, so what the stomach does is it breaks down that food, and then after that food is broken down, it goes to the intestines, which is further broken down, but then also in the intestines, that's where it's absorbing all of its nutrients so that the shark can use those nutrients. And then this part right here, this kind of gray triangle right here, this is the shark's spleen, and it helps defend the body and then is involved in white blood cell production. And so that's what its spleen does, and that's often what our spleen does as well.
Yeah. Now, while we're here, we might as well open the intestine. Yep, mush. Lots of mush. Probably already digested shrimp. There you go. And so this size of the shark right here, of the shark, this would be where the shark meat is. So this is going to be the meaty part of the shark where all of the muscle and what you would eat if you ate shark, but mostly other sharks eat shark. So this is the meaty, fleshy, muscly part.
And then one last organ, we almost missed, we didn't. This right here, this little lighter colored part is the pancreas, and this is actually what produces those digestive enzymes that the stomach and the intestines use to break down its food. That's the pancreas. All right, we're gonna go do a little bit of a further exploration and see if we can take a look at our shark heart. So the shark heart is a little bit further up the shark right here, so we're just going to make another incision up here.
Oh, I see it.
See it? It's a little hard to get to. Make a little bit more. You want to be careful not to accidentally cut it. All right, so here is the shark heart. Cut away some of that tissue. All right, so this is the shark heart right here, and sharks have a 2-chambered heart. Unlike us, we have a 4-chambered heart. So you can see that here's one chamber, and then this kind of gray that you see that's a little bit behind it is its 2nd chamber right there. So that's the shark's heart.
And you can note the proximity of the heart to the gills. So like what we said before, with the water running over those gills, that's how they get the oxygen, so that oxygenated blood can go straight to the heart and pump it through the rest of the shark's body.
Okay. And then let's take a look at our shark's eye. So we're actually going to turn our shark over. Now, getting the eye out can be a little bit tricky. Takes a little bit of finagling.
A little bit of finesse. While Rachel's working on that, so these dogfish sharks we got from a lab or a science place, Carolina, but they are a product of bycatch, so their lives are not wasted or they don't die in vain. They get used as part of educational and classroom teacher settings, environmental centers to be dissected.
What exactly is bycatch, Malloree?
Bycatch is when you go out trying to catch something, and you catch something else. It's like shrimpers, when they pull a shrimp net, they don't only pull in shrimp, they also pull in all sorts of crabs and fish and other creatures, and all of the other stuff that you weren't intending to get is your bycatch.
Okay, so here is the shark's eye, and if we turn it over, we can actually pull out the shark's lens right here. So it kind of looks like
It's a little marble.
little pearl, little marble, and that's the shark's lens, so that captures the light and allows it to see. It looks a little bit different than our lens. Our lens kind of looks like a little cup, sort of.
Yeah, ours is more of a
Not-
bowl. Theirs is
Yeah.
completely round, as they live in the water and need to see all around them.
So I think we're just about finished here. There's one last thing y'all would like to see, and that would be our shark's brain. So getting the brain is a little tricky. We're going to cut across the head.
Across the head. Now, the shark's skeleton is easier to cut than our own. As we said, they're in the chondrichthyes group.
It's
Which
still
means
a little tough.
Still a little tough, but it means they are made out of cartilage.
Alright, so if we pull it back, you can see shark's brain is right there. So
A little bit right there.
So, oops, it does happen, but you know, sharks, they have a really tiny brain, but that brain stores a lot of information. That shark is able to, know how to swim, how to defend itself, how to avoid predators. It knows what to eat, knows how to survive, all on that tiny little brain right here.
Where to
So-
migrate to.
Yeah, where to migrate if they're a migrating shark. So this is all really important stuff for our shark right there, that brain. All right.
Thanks for joining us today in our shark dissection. I hope you learned something cool or new. Sharks are really cool. They're a really cool species of fish that live in the ocean. There are over 450 different species of sharks. They're very important to our ocean's ecosystem and food chain and food web. As the apex predator, they kind of help keep populations of all other fishes and even other sharks under control. As Rachel talked about earlier, they will eat off the weaker fishes to help regulate the fish populations. We can use them when we dissect them, as we did earlier. We kind of learn more about their insides and their organs. As you may have noticed, a lot of the organs that they have inside of them are similar ones to the ones that we have inside of us. So we can learn a bit about them, learn a bit about us, and how everything kind of interacts inside of our bodies. Rachel mentioned earlier about their dermal denticles and how those are being studied for countertops in hospitals, and even swimsuits are modeled after them to help them swim faster. So sharks are just these super cool creatures. They're fascinating. There's no wonder we dedicate a whole week to them every summer, and I thoroughly encourage you to get out and learn a bit more about these really cool creatures. What is so...